Hi, and welcome to the first session in our series called Living Faith. I want to begin by asking you a question. When I say the words of these organizations, what is the first thing that comes into your mind? Rolex. Did you think watch? What about Toyota? Car? 7-Eleven. Maybe that's a bit trickier. 7-Eleven, I think, sometimes comes down to convenience. When the author of the book called Lego Principle did this exercise in a large conference of thousands and thousands of people, most people answered the same answer for each of these organizations. But then when he said the word church, he suddenly got a range of different answers because there was such confusion about what is the one thing that a church stands for. Is it for prayer? Is it for justice? Is it for evangelism? Is it for love? You know, there are so many big words that could be used to describe what a church is supposed to do. This series, we want to land on one word. The one word that has always defined church, that has always defined Christians since the beginning of the first church and of the first Christians all the way to now. And in some sense, it's been an unspoken word, something that we have not actually looked at for a very, very long time, and that word is disciple. You see, when we were first saved, when we came into the kingdom of God, we weren't just inducted into some kind of group or we didn't get membership in a club. We actually became one of Christ's disciples in a group of disciples. It is said that you can make a church and not necessarily get disciples. But you can't make disciples and not get the church. Because the church is the end product. It is like the effect or the result of what you get after you've got a whole range of disciples being built up in it. And so we want to spend some time looking at how are we doing in the discipleship process? Or even as in Matthew 28, 18 to 20 puts, that's the Great Commission, by the way. It says that we are called to go and make disciples. So not only are we to be disciples, we're to go out and make disciples. I wonder, as we reflect on this whole thing, you know, I know for my own life, such a large part of it was I was a Christian when I was young, and I felt like, hey, I'm great at being a Christian. I go to church, I broadly, believe in God. But I think if I reflect on my past, I don't think I ever viewed myself as a disciple that year on year would become more and more like the master. Or that I was even in some kind of discipleship journey. I would think of disciples as people who would follow kung fu masters or other things. But not in terms of my Christianity. But Matthew 6 verse 40 talks about how we can't be a disciple and not end up looking like the person we are discipling under. Matthew 4 verse 19, you see how Jesus calls all of his disciples. He says, follow me. There's this element of following and of leaving. And these disciples, when they followed Jesus, they left their nets, they left their workplace, they left their families, and they followed Jesus. And I want to put it to you that the Christian journey is not just one of mental assent, of doctrines that you read on a book, but it is lived out in discipleship as we go more and more like Christ. It's the model that Jesus employed when he picked just 12 people to kick off, I think, the nuclear explosion that was Christianity, that grew from just that small group of 12 and started a chain reaction that engulfed the world that we live in today. So as we do this series, we're going to ask you a bunch of questions. I'm hoping that you will spend some time discussing, what is the church? What is discipleship? Are you in discipleship? And are you making disciples?